For almost 2,000 years, there's been this massive textual mystery that has just stumped everybody. Who or what is Babylon the Great? It's like a puzzle hidden in plain sight. So today, we're going to treat it like a cold case. We're going to dust for prints, examine the evidence, and see if we can finally crack it. So our whole investigation, it really centers on this wild, powerful vision from the book of Revelation, chapter 17. The Apostle John sees this woman riding on a giant scarlet beast. And right there, on her forehead, there's a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great. The text even calls her the mother of harlots, totally drunk on the blood of the saints. I mean, it is a seriously disturbing image, just packed with symbolic clues. So what on earth does it all mean? So that's our big question, right? Who is this woman? And to solve this ancient puzzle, we are not just going to guess. No, instead we're going to do a proper forensic analysis, looking at the evidence that was left behind right there in the text itself. Now look, any good investigation needs a clear set of rules. You can't just follow hunches all over the place. Our approach here is based on a really specific method for reading this kind of symbolic text. And that's going to make sure we follow the clues where they actually lead, without letting our own ideas mess up the crime scene. The method we're using is something called a mixed hermeneutic, which I know is a super fancy term for a pretty simple idea, a balanced interpretation. See, this approach helps us avoid two big mistakes. On one side, you've got this super rigid literalism, which just doesn't work here because a woman literally riding a seven-headed beast is, well, it's absurd. But on the other side, you could just say it's all one big allegory, but then you lose any connection to real history. So we're landing right in the middle. The big idea is that these powerful symbols, they're not just abstract concepts. They point to real, actual people, places, and events. Okay, so with that in mind, here are our 3 ground rules for this investigation. First up, textual priority. The clues inside this chapter are our #1 guide. We're staying inside the tape. Second, symbol consistency. Once the text tells us what a symbol means, that's what it means. We're not going to change the definition halfway through. And third, and this is a big one, reality behind the symbol. We always have to remember that these symbolic figures, the woman, the beast, they stand for real things, like cities and rulers. All right, rules are established. It's time to open the case file. Let's start digging into the evidence hidden inside the text. Now, here's what's so cool about this. The text doesn't just leave us in the dark to guess. An angel actually shows up and acts as our guide, giving us a cipher to decode the main symbols. As you can see here, the waters represent peoples and nations. The heads and the horns are kings. But look at that last one. That's the key to our entire case. The angel gives us a direct, explicit definition for the woman. And here it is, the single most important piece of evidence, right in verse 18. The angel tells John straight up, the woman is that great city. This is our smoking gun. Let that sink in for a second. The text itself tells us we are not looking for a religious system or some vague idea or a global empire. We are looking for a specific, identifiable city. Okay, so if the woman is that great city, the next logical question is, does the book of Revelation identify the city anywhere else? And you know what? It absolutely does. Earlier, back in chapter 11, we read about 2 witnesses whose bodies will lie in the street of, you guessed it, the great city. And then the text gives us a huge geographic clue. It's the place where also our Lord was crucified. The logic here is just totally direct. Let's lay it out. Premise A, the woman is the great city. Premise B, the great city is where Jesus was crucified. I mean, there's only one city on planet Earth that fits that description, Jerusalem. This is our primary finding, based on the direct evidence. But of course, any good detective knows you can't stop there. You gotta corroborate your findings. So our first piece of corroborating evidence comes from Revelation chapter 16. During this big moment of judgment, the text says the great city was divided, while the cities of the nations fell. Do you see the careful distinction there? The text goes out of its way to separate this one singular city from all the others. And this lines up perfectly with Jerusalem's unique central role throughout all of biblical prophecy. It's always set apart from the other nations. The text also gives the city a kind of spiritual alias, Egypt, the historic oppressor of God's people. And remember, the vision says the woman is drunk with the blood of the saints. This is a direct echo of what Jesus himself said about Jerusalem in the Gospel of Matthew, where he calls it the city that kills the prophets and stones those sent to her. The profiles match perfectly. But this leads us to a major objection. It's the elephant in the room, really. And any good investigation has to face the tough questions head-on. So we have to cross-examine our own evidence. And here's the question I'm sure a lot of you are thinking. How could Jerusalem, the holy city, possibly be described in such a disgusting way as the mother of harlots? It just seems like a complete contradiction, right? So we have to ask, is there any history, any precedent at all, for this kind of language being used about Jerusalem? Well, the answer, maybe surprisingly, is a huge, resounding yes. Calling Jerusalem a harlot isn't some new thing in Revelation. It's actually continuing a long prophetic tradition. As you can see here, the Old Testament prophets, guys like Hosea, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, they all use this exact shocking metaphor to describe Israel's spiritual and political unfaithfulness to their covenant with God. So what does harlotry even mean in this prophetic context? Well, it's not just about what you might think. First, it's figurative. It means idolatry, chasing after false gods. Second, it's political. It refers to making these messy alliances and trusting in the power of other nations like Egypt or Assyria instead of trusting in God. That is the established biblical definition of spiritual harlotry. And here is the final forensic link that just ties it all together. Look at the punishment. Revelation says the beast and its horns, the woman's former political allies, are going to turn on her, destroy her, and burn her with fire. Now, this isn't just some random judgment. It is a direct, absolutely stunning parallel to a prophecy in Ezekiel 16, where God warns Jerusalem that he will gather her lovers, her foreign allies, to judge her in the exact same way. The punishment fits the biblical crime scene to a T. Okay, we've followed the textual clues, we've looked at the corroborating evidence, and we've cross-examined the biggest objection. It's time to summarize the case and deliver a final verdict. So our evidence checklist is complete. Let's just run it down one more time. Geographically, we've pinned the great city to the place where Christ was crucified. Prophetically, it's a city that's always kept separate from the cities of the nations. Its character? A persecutor of God's messengers, which matches Jesus' own description. And the harlot imagery? It's the consistent biblical metaphor for covenant-breaking Jerusalem. All 4 lines of evidence point to one single suspect. The final verdict, based on this forensic analysis of the text, is that the 3 key references to the great city in the book of Revelation all point to one specific place, Jerusalem, a city that at a future time of deep unfaithfulness is identified spiritually by its character as Babylon, Sodom, and Egypt. You know, this interpretation, it does more than just solve an ancient puzzle. It suggests that one of the most significant prophecies out there isn't about some distant foreign power, but it's about a tragic internal conflict right at the very heart of the biblical story. It lines up the symbolic vision of Revelation with the literal prophetic history of the city of God. And it leaves us with one last, provocative thought. What if the key to understanding one of the Bible's greatest future mysteries has been hidden in its own past all along?